Welcome back to Open Line at WOSU 820. This hour we'll talk about the importance of nature and the fate of our planet, about our interdependence with the plants and animals of the earth and the earth itself. My guest, environmentalist David Suzuki, told a Canadian broadcast audience in 1988 that the basic life support systems of our planet were being destroyed at an alarming rate and on a massive scale. So 16 years later, where do we stand now? Is Earth, to coin a phrase, in the balance? Are we doing a better job of helping our planet flourish? My guest is a leading environmentalist and geneticist who has received consistently high acclaim for his ability to explain the complexities of science in a compelling and easily understood way. You've seen David Suzuki's public television series, The Secret of Life, on WOSU TV 34, and his series, The Brain, on the Discovery Channel. He's the author of more than 40 books, including The Sacred Balance, A Tree, and Good News for a Change. His new book is David Suzuki, The Autobiography. Welcome back from the San Francisco Bay Area this morning. David Suzuki, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
That 1988 CBC radio series called It's a Matter of Survival.
Yes.
You interviewed, you say, 150 scientists and experts, very life support systems of the planet destroyed at a horrifying rate and on a grand scale. Well, how are we doing now, 16 years later?
Well, I mean, we're continuing on the same path. We are undermining the life support systems, and I don't know if you've seen what's come out in the last couple of weeks. The report, the study, the 4-year study on the state of the ocean's fishes.
Yes.
And it's absolutely catastrophic. They're now predicting that every single edible fish that we use will have collapsed by 2048. There was a report that came out 3 weeks ago that looked at human predation. That is, we cut trees down and we take fish and we put carbon dioxide into the air. And if all of human activity, what we take out of our environment, can be replaced by nature in a year, if what we take in a year is replaced by nature in a year, then presumably we could do it forever. That's sustainability. But what they find is that it takes 1 1/3 year for nature to replace what we take out in a year. And this is deficit spending. We're using up our natural resources. And we've been doing this for over 20 years now. That is taking more in a year than nature can reproduce. And by 2050, at the rate we're going, they say it will take 2 planets to provide us with what we demand. So obviously we're just using up the natural capital of the earth. And we call it economic progress. I don't get it. We're polluting the atmosphere, so the climate is changing. We're depleting the oceans. We're destroying the forests. We're polluting the air, water, and soil. And we all do this in the name of economic growth.
And, of course, just on a practical level, it's going to cost us greatly on the economic level.
Oh, I mean, there was a report that came out from an economist, Sir Nicholas Stern, in Britain, that looked at the cost of doing or not doing anything about climate change. And what he says is that it will cost us, if we don't do anything about climate change, it's going to cost us of the order of $7 trillion to try to deal with the consequences of that. He says it will be more expensive to deal with the effects of climate change than the cost of World War I and World War II put together. And yet you have a country, the biggest polluter of the atmosphere in the world, the United States, that is refusing to even sign the Kyoto Protocol, which is the attempt to begin to cap our emissions and bring it down.
Well, you talk about the general scientific illiteracy of many people, and in fact, the Canadian Parliament, you said, when people have been tested in the Parliament, members of the Parliament, they don't know a great deal about science. Is it illiteracy, or do people of the various nations, the governments, understand what's going on?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question, because Britain has certainly taken the threat of global warming very, very seriously. They have set a target of over an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. And it was Britain that asked this economist, Sir Nicholas Stern, to examine the economic costs of climate change. And I think that they've taken it very seriously. So has France and so have Germany, because they have a long tradition of science. Science, you think of England, you think of Charles Darwin, you think of of Sir Isaac Newton. You think of some of the greatest scientists were English. It's a part of their culture. And I don't understand why the United States, this year, the United States won every single science Nobel Prize. Science, the United States is a leading country in the area of science, and yet you have the president who has been advised by the National Academy of Sciences, the leading scientist in the United States, saying that global warming is a far greater threat to American stability and survival than terrorism, that you've got to do something immediately, and yet he's even denying that climate change is real. What's going on? I don't get it. The indication in Canada when we did this is back in the 1970s, was that when we looked at members of Parliament in Ottawa, over 70% of them came from business and they came from law. That was their background. When we gave 50 members of Parliament a simple test for their comprehension of science and technology, it was business people and lawyers who scored absolutely rock bottom. So what does that mean? It means that we elect people to office who are scientifically illiterate, and they're going to have to make decisions about what we do about global warming, what we do about toxic pollution, what we do about the depleted ocean reserves, what we do about deforestation, about stem cell research, about cloning. How can you make informed, thoughtful decisions if you're scientifically illiterate? So this is the problem we face, is that our elected representatives are a reflection of the general population. If the population is scientifically illiterate, we can't make really informed decisions.
Why do you think the general population in the United States and Canada is scientifically illiterate?
Because we are failing to make science a fundamental part of our educational system. We talk about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, science should be one of the most fundamental things that we learn, because science is the most powerful force that shapes our lives today. Science, when applied by industry, medicine, and the military, have reverberations that rattle through our lives. When I was born in 1936, when I was a child, there were no computers, there were no jet planes, there were no satellites, there were no transistors, there were no Xerox, oral contraceptives, organ transplants. You think of the way that our lives have been changed in the last 65, 70 years by science. Our lives in society have been transformed beyond recognition. Well, surely as we go our way into the 21st century, we've got to be scientifically literate so that we can avoid the terrible problems that result from the application of science and technology.
As you point out, we generally embrace technology because they do things for us that are very practical,
yes,
but we don't think of the side effects. We don't plan for them.
Exactly. And we've got lessons here that should teach us to be more careful. Rachel Carson in 1962 wrote Silent Spring, and, when DDT was found to kill insects, we thought it was the greatest thing ever going. The man who discovered it won a Nobel Prize in 1948. We thought DDT was great. When Rachel Carson came out with her book, the chemical industry just attacked her as an old maid, hysterical, didn't have the scientific credibility, and of course she was right. And DDT ought to be a warning to us that technology is very powerful, but there are unexpected effects, and we've got to be more careful. CFC is the same thing, and I'm sure the same thing is going to happen with genetically modified organisms.
Well, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, if generally the population in North America is not literate scientifically, if it is because we do not educate in schools, and therefore we elect people who themselves are scientifically illiterate and expect them to deal with these technological and environmental changes, that's not a very optimistic scenario, huh?
It's a very frightening scenario, because what happens with politicians? They make decisions then that are based on political considerations, and I use this in the most pejorative way. It's about power politics and who has access to our politicians, especially in the United States, a tremendous amount of lobbying that goes on. Well, this is the system that we've got. If the people that pay for people to run for office get their candidates elected, they have